I never thought a schoolyard encounter could turn heartbreaking, until the bully met his match. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel it in my bones. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. I stood there, heart racing, as whispers of dread danced around me. My best friend Jake had always been there, the one person who understood my struggles against the relentless taunts. But now, even he couldn't seem to help me. In the middle of the chaos, there was Tyler, the undisputed king of cruelty. He sauntered across the yard, flanked by his minions, their laughter cutting like shards of glass. I could see the thrill in his eyes when he spotted me, the unmistakable look of a predator ready to strike. My hands trembled as I clenched my fists. I knew he was coming. This wasn't just any ordinary day at school. Rumors swirled among us like storm clouds. They said Tyler had found something in an old book with dark powers hidden beneath the bleachers. Whispers of he could control minds, bend will, all fueled my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling that today would be different. Jake nudged me, his brow furrowed, his voice a shaky whisper. "Don't let him see you sweat." But my voice felt strangled in my throat, a lump that wouldn't budge. I could hear footsteps pounding closer, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. A crowd gathered, faces alight with excitement and curiosity. Some had their phones out, recording the impending showdown. The sun blazed above, yet I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I glanced at Mr. Thompson, our teacher, who stood too far away to intervene, arms crossed, specks of concern visible in his furrowed brow. "Hey, loser!" Tyler's voice rang out, sharp and taunting. The world around me dimmed, as though I'd fallen into a tunnel. I was trapped in that moment, every eye on me. I felt raw and exposed, and I hated it. Then, something unexpected happened. A surge of courage washed over me. I opened my mouth, attempting to speak, though the words felt heavy on my tongue. Just as I was about to reclaim my narrative, a piercing scream ripped through the air. A girl, a mere shadow of herself, pushed through the crowd. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear. "You have to stop him," she shouted, desperation seeping into every syllable. My heart leaped. Who was she? Why was she so afraid? Before I could process it, the grounded world of the schoolyard slipped away from me, replaced by the raw urgency in her voice. I had always looked at reality through a foggy lens, ensnared by dread. But now, fate was weaving an intricate web around me, pulling me and this stranger closer. The crowd held its breath. Tyler stepped forward, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Who do you think you are?" he sneered, but that girl didn't falter, and I found myself cheering for her in silence. In an instant, tension radiated, the silence so thick it could suffocate anyone nearby. What would she do next? Who was she to step into Tyler's arena? My breath caught in my throat. This was more than a schoolyard conflict. This was about to explode. My eyes darted between the girl and Tyler, the weight of the moment anchoring me in place. What if she fought back? The thought barely skimmed the edges of my mind before another scream summed everything up. The stage was set. The world would never be the same again, and neither would I. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The girl stepped closer, her resolve like a sturdy wall before Tyler's sneering facade. "You think you can get away with this?" Her voice rang out, the defiance in her words slicing through the otherwise stagnant air. My heart raced, caught in an intricate dance between fear and awe. I could see the ripples of confusion spread across the faces of the spectators. They were equally captivated and bewildered by her unexpected bravery. Tyler's facade faltered for just a second, a flicker of uncertainty marring his confidence. But it vanished quickly, replaced by a venomous grin as he turned his venomous gaze on her. "And who do you think you are? Some kind of hero?" He let out a mocking laugh, an ugly sound that reverberated through the crowd. "Actually, yes," she replied, her voice steady, unwavering like a flame facing the wind. "You think having power makes you strong? But it doesn't. It just shows how weak you truly are." A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. I watched as surprise and admiration flickered across some faces. In that moment, hope crept in, a tiny seed bursting through the cracked pavement of despair I had grown accustomed to. The air crackled with tension, the kind that felt monumental, like the calm before the storm. Suddenly, Tyler lunged forward, his hands clenched into fists, but the girl didn't flinch. Instead, she took a step back, maintaining her ground as she glanced back at me, a fleeting look that I didn't quite understand. Was she asking for support? Was she willing to share her courage with me? My heart swelled painfully in response, my resolve warring with the terror that bound me. And then it happened. A boy from the crowd, someone I'd seen in class but never spoken to, took a step forward, echoing her defiance. "Leave her alone, Tyler. Fight your own battles." The unexpected solidarity in the boy's words ignited something in the crowd. Encouraged murmurings began to ripple, the tide slowly turning against the glaring oppression I had felt for so long. "Yeah, you're just a loser with a fake reputation," another girl shouted, her voice trembling but strong. The domino effect was unstoppable. My chest tightened. It was a symphony of resistance, and I couldn't help but watch in awe as a lone spark splayed into an uproar. But Tyler's anger transformed him, his eyes flashing with fury. "This isn't over. You'll regret this," he spat out, his threats laced with venom. But the crowd was no longer silent. Discontent blared like an alarm, rattling the walls of the illusion he had built around himself. Suddenly, the boy who had spoken up was at my side, offering me a wary smile. "Come on, man. You can't let him win. We're here for you." The sincerity in his eyes caught me off guard, budding camaraderie intertwining with the uncertainty that had always held me captive. I felt my throat tighten at the revelation that this boy, this stranger, would stand up for me at that moment when I had barely found the words to stand up for myself. There was a warmth blossoming within me, puncturing my icy fear with small rays of connection and compassion. A small glimmer of hope, intertwined with the rising chaos, seemed potent enough to burst through the shadows. In a twist of fate, just as Tyler seemed poised to retaliate, suddenly the bell rang, its loud echo slicing through the tension. Students began to disperse, their spirits riding a wave of newfound courage. And though the crowd scattered, it was clear that the balance of power had shifted, if only slightly. But just as I started to feel a fragile sense of victory, I turned to find that the girl had vanished into the thrumming chaos. My heart sank at the sudden loss. I wanted to speak to her, to thank her, but she had disappeared just as abruptly as she had come. The rest of the days slipped by in a haze, but Tyler's threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavier than any dread I had felt before. Part of me was afraid he would retaliate or seek revenge, and another part believed I had found something precious, allies who would stand by me in the face of cruelty. Surrounded by friends, surely I could face him once again. But when the final bell rang, I walked out of school careful to avoid the shadows, trying to find the solace of Jake's company. Yet, as I approached the usual spot where we sat, my heart stopped. Jake was standing there, but his expression was hollow, his eyes wide and filled with a fear I had never seen before. "Dude, you need to listen," he said, voice shaking. "I heard something about Tyler. You need to know his words hung in the air, steeped in unease, and the world around me felt like it shifted again. Whatever hope I had built up was suddenly overshadowed by a fresh wave of anxiety that crested over me. I felt that unraveling springing back into my chest, tightening like a noose around the thread of courage I had just begun to weave. "What is it?" I asked, dread clawing at my insides. A chilling seriousness loomed in Jake's demeanor, and I knew whatever it was about to plunge me deeper into the turmoil. "Tyler, he's not just a bully anymore. He's been gathering something dark. It's real, and it's coming for you." As those words sunk in, the fragile threads of hope I had clung to unraveled, revealing a truth darker than anything I had faced before. The schoolyard had shifted, and with it, so had the stakes. Panic clutched at my heart as Jake's words echoed in the air. "Tyler, gathering something dark." Those words swirled around me like autumn leaves caught in a gale, threatening to suffocate the flickering embers of courage I had just begun to nurture. My mind raced with possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. What could he possibly have been planning? "What do you mean, something dark?" I spat out, my voice trembling as I desperately sought clarity. The world felt like it was cracked open, revealing an underbelly I was not ready to face. Jake swallowed hard, his typical bravado shattered, replaced with a fear that weighed down on his shoulders. "He's been talking to these guys, the ones who used to be in the shadows, you know? The ones who have a reputation for trouble. They're not just making noise, they're serious. I heard Tyler say he wanted to show everyone how powerful he really is, and he's got them following him now." The reality closed in on me like a vice. My stomach knotted, a sickening sense of dread curling within. I never thought Tyler's relentless bullying could escalate into something more insidious, but as Jake stood before me, his fear palpable, it shifted something deep inside me. What was once a lonely battle was now morphing into a looming darkness, one that thrummed with potential for destruction far beyond mere words or threats. I don't know how it all works, but people are afraid. They're saying he's planning something big during the homecoming game, like a spectacle, you know? Something to humiliate you in front of everyone. Jake's voice trembled with every syllable, and I felt my skin prickle. A pit opened up within me. I didn't want to be a victim of this twisted game, but we can't let him do this, I said, more to myself than to Jake. The defiance I felt earlier had turned into desperation, clashing against the reality of this new fear. We have to do something. Though I felt small, I could not let fear dictate my choices. "Easy to say, harder to do," Jake murmured, a tremor in his voice. "You're not the only one he wants to target. This could get ugly, really ugly." With each word, I could feel the walls closing in, the anxiety swirling and coiling itself around my chest like constricting vines. Just then, I caught something out of the corner of my eye, a figure standing at the edge of the schoolyard, observing us intently. My heart leapt as I recognized her, the girl from earlier, the one with the fire in her eyes. She approached slowly, her expression unreadable. "I heard what he's planning," she said, her voice wavering slightly yet firm. "And I think I might know how to fight back." "Who are you?" I blurted out, bewildered. "Why do you care?" "Because I've been where you are. I know what it's like to feel powerless, and I couldn't stand by watching someone take advantage of others." Her gaze locked onto mine, fierce and unwavering, as if she could see the turmoil raging within me. "But I also know that if we band together, we can stop him." Jake and I exchanged surprised glances, questioning and intrigued. "How?" he asked, his voice laced with a skepticism that I shared. She took a deep breath, and I realized how much she believed in what she was saying, how much she was willing to risk. There are others who feel the same way. People who've been bullied, people who want to be done living in fear. We can organize, have a rally or something during the game, show that we're not afraid of him or his threats. Well, make it bigger than him. I blinked, momentarily stunned by the prospect. A rally? I had spent weeks avoiding confrontation, barely glancing at the dark cloud that was Tyler. But somewhere buried beneath that fear was a glimmer of something hope, perhaps? A movement caught my attention, and I turned to find some students from my class, lingering nearby and clearly eavesdropping on our conversation. I felt a swell of warmth and support building within me. They hadn't fled. They were listening. We could do this together, I said, my voice finding strength in the unexpected unity gathering around us. It's just I don't know if everyone will join in. What if he retaliates? What if he does something worse? The girl nodded, her eyes fierce and unyielding. Then we keep standing together. We face it. A rally won't just be a message to Tyler. It's for all of us, for everyone who has ever felt afraid. But we're going to need strategy and courage. We discuss plans, anxiety laced with the simmering possibility of rebellion. For the first time, the weight of dread felt slightly lighter, replaced by the shared determination of standing up against an oppressive force together. But just as our conversation gained momentum, echoing with newfound possibilities, I caught sight of a shadow slipping away at the edge of the school grounds. Tyler. His eyes glinted with malicious intent, a predator watching its prey. The thought sent chills through my spine. He had heard every word. What if our rally only fueled his fire? What if the darkness he gathered was worse than we could ever imagine? My heart raced once more, the warmth of unity mingling with the cold, bitter tang of fear. We had decided to fight back, but the vulnerability of that choice loomed larger than any flicker of hope we had nurtured. As I reached out to grasp the hands of those around me in solidarity, my stomach twisted as uncertainty gnawed at my resolve, leaving me feeling smaller than before, yet I knew this was only the beginning. The world felt as fragile as a freshly spun web glimmering in the morning light, each moment teetering on the brink of destruction. And all I could think was how soon we might find out just what Tyler's darkness held. The crisp autumn air offered a fleeting sense of exhilaration, but each breath I took was weighed down by the dread of what awaited us. We stood there, hands intertwined, a knot of uncertainty growing in the pit of my stomach. Jake's look of determination mirrored the girl's, but it was laced with a questioning spirit, one that echoed my own inner turmoil. As we huddled together, whispers bounced back and forth, stitching together a canvas of plans and dreams, forging a glimmering thread of hope amidst the shadows threatening to engulf us. We agreed to gather ideas and soldiers for our cause. Each person that joined our ranks was another spark igniting beneath the overwhelming cloak of fear. But as the day wore on, layers of dread tightened around me. During lunch, I could feel Tyler's eyes lurking from his table across the cafeteria. He leaned back arrogantly, laughing with his friends, but beneath his apparent confidence was something darker, something more sinister that gnawed at the edges of my mind. The weight of knowing he was aware of us felt heavy, but there was no turning back now. We had made our choice. We left the cafeteria that afternoon with muddied hearts, half daring and half terrorized by the prospect of rallying students to take a stand. I spoke to a few sympathetic classmates, each of them wary but intrigued by the idea of unity versus Tyler's tyranny. They voiced promises to attend the rally, a flicker of hope kindling inside me with each agreement. But there were those who sided with the bully, sneering dismissively at our efforts, and daring us to defy him. And no matter how many moments I spent rallying support, the ache in my chest persisted, gnawing deeper with each passing day. The closer we drew to homecoming weekend, the louder the doubts threatened to drown any embers of courage I managed to fan. What if the rally failed? What if Tyler retaliated not just against us, but against those who dared to stand as allies? That evening, as I sat alone in my room, staring blankly at the flickering screen of my laptop, a message pinged across the digital void. It was from the girl with the fierce eyes. "Meet me at the park tomorrow, after school. I have an idea that could help us." Curiosity sparked as I considered her resilience, the boldness that seemed to carve a path through my uncertainty. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, I walked toward the park, heart racing not with excitement, but the trepidation of uncovering the unknown. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and leaves crunched beneath my feet, a gentle reminder to tread carefully. When I arrived, I found her waiting on a bench, the fading light reflecting a halo around her hair. Her presence filled me with renewed strength. She had a way of making a person believe in the impossible. "I've been speaking to a few students who might be influential," she began. "They want to help amplify our message. If we get some of them to speak at the rally, it might draw in more attention not just from students, but from the community." Her voice was steady, a calming balm against the raging storm inside me. "Will that be enough?" I asked, battling each rising wave of doubt. "What if he tries to sabotage it?" "That's a risk we have to be willing to take. Change is never easy. He will fight back." Her gaze sharpened, and I could almost see the determination flickering behind her eyes. "That's why we need to make this event powerful, larger than ourselves." Just then, shadows danced at the edge of my vision. I turned, tension coiling around my heart as I recognized the figures approaching. It was a couple of my classmates, ones who had openly ridiculed our plans. Among them was Matt, Tyler's most fervent supporter. "What's this? Planning another pathetic little protest?" Matt sneered, stepping closer, the malice dripping off his words like venom. "You really think you can take him on? You'll end up humiliated." Each word stabbed through the fragile network of hope we had woven. My heart sank as I glanced at the girl, who stood her ground beside me. "We're not afraid of you. Or Tyler. We're standing up for what's right," she said, a fire igniting in her voice. Matt laughed, the sound grating against the autumn air. "Right? That's rich. You're just asking to be his next target. You're playing with fire." I felt my chest tighten again, the playful bravado I had wanted to wear like armor quickly dissipating under the weight of his taunts. But before I could voice my fear, the girl reached out, taking my hand firmly in hers. "Let them come. If we don't fight now, this cycle will never end." For a moment, I felt something shift, the tides of fear giving way to an unwavering resolve. With a rush of desperation mingled with conviction, I met Matt's gaze. "And if we don't do it now, when will we?" "Well, keep growing stronger until you and Tyler no longer own this space." Matt recoiled, confusion flashing in his eyes for just a split second before he stepped closer, menacingly. "Good luck then. You'll need it." As he retreated, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, a mix of exhilaration and terror. A single thought pressed against my consciousness, a single question: had we truly gone too far, or had we just begun to fight back? Yet, as the shadows around us darkened, I could feel the first tremors of the storm approaching, and the fear gnawed deeper than ever before. What would happen at the rally? Would it be our dawn or our downfall? And what more could Tyler unleash as we stepped into the abyss? The stakes had been raised, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, a single dreadful thought loomed. Tyler would not let this go without a fight, and the real struggle was only just beginning. The days leading up to the rally crawled by, each one a surreal blend of anticipation and dread. The air felt electric, charged with whispers and stolen glances, as everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the moment when everything would erupt into chaos or perhaps a glimmer of triumph. Each corner of the school buzzed with talk of our plans, both supportive and disparaging, and within me, the weight of that attention became an unbearable shadow. That Friday, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at a messy breakup of clothes flung across the floor as I tried to piece together what to wear for the rally. My fingers brushed over a worn-out hoodie, a reminder of comfort during darker times, but I knew it wouldn't translate the bravery I was attempting to muster. Instead, I pulled on a shirt that bore a simple message: strength in unity. It felt ironic, given my own fractured state. As the clock ticked closer to the rally time, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Don't worry, we'll do this together." I'm proud of us." His words anchored me, a fleeting moment of solace amidst rising turbulence. No matter how tumultuous the storm of fear became, I had Jake, the girl, and a growing number of allies. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us fighting against tyranny. When I arrived at the school courtyard, the sun hovered low, casting elongated shadows as students gathered in small clusters, their chatter mixing with the gentle rustling of autumn leaves. My heart quickened as I spotted the girl standing confidently at the center, flanked by a few influential classmates who agreed to speak. They exchanged anxious smiles, their nervousness evident but bolstered by shared purpose. "We're here to make a statement," the girl announced, her voice slicing through the murmurs. "We won't be silenced any longer." The crowd erupted into applause, and as cheers bounced off the brick walls of the school, I felt a spark ignite inside me. Then, just as that spark threatened to bloom into a flame, I caught a glimpse of familiar figures rounding the corner. Tyler and his crew, swaggering with an unsettling confidence. There was a living embodiment of the dread I'd felt creeping into my veins since we had started this journey. My stomach churned as I exchanged frantic glances with Jake and the others. Tyler approached, a smirk carved into his face, as the world around me dimmed. His presence loomed like a dark cloud threatening to drown the fragile rays of hope that had begun to pierce the overcast sky. "So, this is your big stand, huh? Cute." His tone dripped with condescension, and laughter erupted behind him from his followers, a cruel soundtrack to our resolve. I could barely hear the rally starting as my focus narrowed on Tyler. "You're just digging your own graves, trying to rally against me," he continued, his eyes locking onto mine as though daring me to respond. "You think you can change anything?" Determination surged through me. I had to fight against the apprehension clinging to my bones. "We represent those who refuse to be pushed around anymore," I countered, shaking but resolute. "We're fighting back, and this time, you won't intimidate us." With each word, the fire in my belly flurried, a small yet potent thing, fragile yet forceful. Before Tyler could retort, the girl beside me took a step forward, her presence radiating strength. "People are fed up with your bullying, Tyler. Your time is over. We will gather here again and again until everyone understands that we deserve respect." Suddenly, a low whistle broke through the tension, drawing attention away from our confrontation for a moment. Another student, someone from the back rows, stepped forward with an unexpected move, a protest sign held high that read, "We stand together." The ripple effect was immediate. Others picked up signs, their simple messages of unity speaking louder than any words could convey. I could hardly manage a smile through the commotion, but just as I began to feel hopeful, Tyler's laughter sliced through the air again, harsh and biting. "You think this will scare me? Pathetic. It'll show you all what happens when you cross me." The crowd grew silent, the air tightening as a collective shiver ran through us. My heart raced. How far was he willing to go? His eyes darted around, and as I watched, realization dawned on me. The cruelty of the moment was about to unfold. I hadn't just seen a bully intimidate a group of students. I had seen the monster lurking behind the mask of teenage bravado. "Get ready for hell," he warned, and in that instant, something shifted in the crowd. A realization settled. This wasn't just about rallying against a bully. It was about igniting a movement that had been waiting in the wings for too long, an awakening. That swift shift of energy sparked something deep within me. Across the courtyard, conversations of solidarity hummed with an urgency, and before I could second-guess myself, I stepped onto the platform beside the girl and Jake. Courage bubbled within me, and as I looked over the gathered students, I felt hope merging with fear, tightly intertwined like threads of a tapestry. But just then, a scream erupted from the crowd, a sickening sound that shattered the moment. I turned in horror to see a younger student pushed aside, knocked to the ground by one of Tyler's posse. Gasps echoed loudly, and the atmosphere thickened, spiraling into fear and confusion. My heart clenched at the sight of it. An instinct pulled me forward, but an icy grip of doubt clenched around my chest. Was this the facade we had presented crumbling before the very fight we were trying to ignite? Would this rally end not in victory but in a catastrophe? I caught the girl's eye, and in her gaze, I saw a flicker of what could be a reminder that sometimes the most significant battles began not with resistance, but with the very act of rising and falling together. And just then, the announcement that would change everything reached my ears, a reminder that Tyler wasn't just a bully. He was a threat far more woven into the fabric of our existence than we ever anticipated. The faculty had been alerted to our plans, turning our momentous day into a whirlwind of confusion and chaos. We have to stay strong, I whispered to the girl and Jake. This is not over. As the realization sank in, another thought knocked the breath from my lungs. What if this was just the initial wave? What if Tyler had planned more than we could have ever prepared for? The stakes had escalated, and the negotiations were far from over. I could only hope that our strength in unity would outlast the darkness threatening to engulf us. The aftermath of the chaos left the air thick with confusion and dread. Students milled about in the courtyard. The once vibrant rally transformed into murmurs of concern and nervous glances darting toward Tyler and his crew. My heart still pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat echoing the turmoil swirling around us. Each gasp from the crowd felt like an intimate admission, a collective fear that clung to our skin like a second layer, a reminder that our stand against Tyler could easily morph into a battleground of broken spirit. As I scanned the faces of my peers, I caught glimpses of unfathomable bravery amidst the fear. A girl in the front held her sign like a shield, her fingers wrapped tightly around the wooden stick as if afraid it might waver. Another, her cheeks flushed with indignation, was whispering urgently into her phone, probably calling a parent or someone who could help. The energy pulsed with the potential for change, yet the threat of retaliation loomed over us like a dark cloud, seemingly ready to rain down chaos at any moment. While I stood among my friends, the girl beside me, her face determined but slightly pale, leaned closer. What do we do now? Her voice barely reached above the whisper of fear crowding the air. I could see it in her eyes. She was searching, waiting for a glimmer of hope, a beacon to guide us through this storm. Together, I replied, my determination still flickering, fighting against the shadow of doubt that threatened to eclipse it. We stand together. But even as I spoke those words, I felt a sinking feeling in my gut. Would our togetherness be enough? Tyler had always been one to exploit weakness. During those moments of contemplation, I thought about how to make our voices heard without inviting more violence. Suddenly the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed across the courtyard, and I turned to see the girl I had faith in, her name still new in my mind as it danced on the tip of my tongue. The teachers are coming, she said, her voice shaking slightly. We need to decide if we want to stay. The atmosphere shifted abruptly, and with it, my heart raced. I glanced at Jake, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the chaos. What do you think? I asked, searching his eyes for guidance. He had always been my pillar of strength, but I saw uncertainty flickering behind his confident visage. Maybe we should just walk away. It's not worth it if it leads to more trouble, he suggested, words steady yet stained with fear. From behind, another voice cut through the haze, the girl who had led the initial stand. Walking away is what they want. This is our moment. We can't back down now. An energetic swell surged through the crowd, igniting cheers, and suddenly, I felt a spark of conviction. We can't allow them to control our voices. I called out, the fire in my belly erupting again. If we stop now, we let them win. We can endure whatever they throw at us if we hold strong together. An unexpected ripple of applause broke through the uncertainty, and I caught sight of the younger students looking up with wide eyes, confusion mixed with awe. I felt a new sense of responsibility. Standing strong could serve as our battle cry. Yet, just as hope began to unfurl within my heart, a chilling realization swept over me. Tyler's laughter echoed once again, louder this time, a malicious cacophony that cut through our momentum. "You really think you can stand against me forever?" His voice rang out, confident and dripping with malice. "You have no idea what happens next." We fell silent under that threat, the laughter dying as quickly as it had begun. Each pair of eyes turned nervously toward Tyler, the gravity of his menace wrapping around us like a shroud. And then, with surreal precision, something unexpected transpired. A solitary figure detached from the shadows of his posse, stepping forward, the flicker of courage evident in his stance. It was Derek, someone I had considered an ally in the background. "Tyler," he said cautiously, a tension evident in his voice. "This isn't right. They deserve their space." A murmur ran through the crowd, and for the first time, all attention settled on him. The rift between our opposing sides wide enough for reconciliation. Tyler's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing as if calculating something. "You're going to side with the losers now, Derek?" Something flickered. A moment of silence heavy with uncertainty. Would Derek stand strong or cave under the weight of Tyler's intimidation? My heart raced as I held my breath, praying for something, anything to happen. In that brief pause, a flicker of hope ignited within me, a yearning for change that blossomed with sudden ferocity. Maybe, just maybe, we weren't as alone as I had thought. Maybe there were still sparks of courage hidden among the crowd, waiting for someone to coax them into a flame. But what if it didn't work? What if the moment was one that would close off every path to unity with suffocating darkness? Then another wave of dread washed over me. The faculty arriving meant oversight and orders, but it also meant we could be pressed out of existence to maintain some semblance of the status quo. Tyler was unpredictable, and I had the sinking feeling he was already plotting his next move. With breath held tight, I felt time stretch, a fragile moment poised on a knife's edge as I looked at Derek, then back at the friends who were now more than mere allies, they were family. In that second, I felt the weight of what was about to happen press down on us all. Would we choose to stand together, or would fear dissolve the very unity we so desperately battled to maintain? And as the faculty rounded the corner, I knew the next step was hurtling toward us, regardless of whether we were ready or not. As the faculty members approached, their presence cast long shadows that mingled uneasily with our dwindling hope. I could see Miss Chalmers, the history teacher, her brows furrowed in concern, flanked by Principal Hastings, whose stoic expression seemed to tell 100 stories of chaos contained. My pulse quickened as they entered the courtyard, cutting through the air laden with tension. "Everyone, please," Miss Chalmers called out, lifting her hands to quell the rising tide of noise. "Let's gather around and talk about this peacefully. I understand that emotions are high." Tyler's voice sliced through her attempt at mediation. He laughed, a dark, resonant sound that reverberated in the pit of my stomach. "You call this high? Let's get real. You teach us about standing up for what's right, but look at you now, hiding behind authority, afraid of a little teenage uprising." A hush fell over the courtyard as eyes turned to Miss Chalmers, as if she were supposed to have the answers. The pulse of uncertainty throbbed louder than my heartbeat. Were we truly alone in this fight? "Tyler, that's enough." Derek stepped in again, his voice steady but strained. "This isn't about you. It's about us choosing to be heard." "Choosing to be heard?" Tyra echoed incredulously beside me. "When did that become a crime?" Hope flickered in me like an ember refusing to die out, but I couldn't shake the dread simmering in my gut. Miss Chalmers glanced at Principal Hastings, seeking reinforcements, her eyes betraying her worry. I could see them plotting in silent communication, a desperate attempt to rally a response. "Let's step back for a moment," Hastings finally interjected, his tone grave yet controlled. "I need everyone to disperse peacefully. We'll resolve this without escalating to further conflict." His words, however calming they might have been, only ignited the restlessness simmering in me. "We can't just walk away. We've waited too long for this moment. I spoke before I could overthink it, my heart pounding as I realized I'd put myself right in the spotlight, a place I had promised to keep others safe from. Hastings is right, Tyler's taunting voice snapped back, sharp as a whip. Let's see how long they can hold this facade before reality brings them crashing down. Voices rose, igniting a firestorm of dissent. It's not a facade, someone shouted back, emboldened by the surge of courage. But I could also see the uncertainty crackling within our ranks. I glanced at Jake, who stood beside me, his eyes wide, grappling with the mounting pressure. The fact that I was standing up was noble, but would it be enough? My instinct told me this could all spiral, descend into faces twisted with anger, hearts clumped with fear. Suddenly, I felt a hand clasp mine. It was the girl beside Meth One who had leaned over earlier, her fingers trembling as they gripped mine tightly, grounding me in this whirlwind of emotions. We fight for what's right, she said, determination flowing through her words, like an almost tangible force, carving pathways in the stagnant air. Well, it looks like the soldiers are already weak. Tyler smirked, his laughter echoing as he surveyed the battlefield. I don't see any leadership here, just a bunch of lost sheep pretending to be a pack. Then a commotion broke out in the shadows of the courtyard. A group of students, who had initially stayed on the sidelines, began to inch forward. Faces emerged from obscurity: Sarah, Julia, a couple of others who felt the pull of bravery surge within them. With their arrival came an audible gasp and a rousing cheer from behind me. Together, they shouted in unison, the chorus rising to fill the awkward silence that had fallen, pushing against the weight of Tyler's disapproval. For a fleeting moment, we thrived on that unity, buoyed by the sheer power of collective defiance. But that fragile strength was swiftly clouded by a blur of movement. The faculty rushed in, creating a barrier against Tyler and his crew, an action meant to shield us or simply dismiss the fervor we had built. I stepped forward, as if propelled by instinct. We need to talk instead of dismissing us. You can't silence our voice with threats. The moment hung heavy in the air, and I could almost see the precarious balance between hope and despair wrestling inside everyone gathered. Seeing Miss Chalmers' brow furrow deeper, I knew she wanted to build bridges rather than walls. Let's hear everyone's perspective, she said, pushing forward to take the first step to mediate this eruption of emotions. We can work this out together. Tyler, Derek, both of you. My heart plummeted. This wasn't the path I had envisioned. The truth weighed heavy in my chest. I could see it unraveling, a knitted project falling apart strand by strand. Tyler wouldn't give in to dialogue. He thrived on chaos and intimidation. And just as I thought I might lose everything, a boy stepped forward, someone I recognized but had never truly acknowledged amidst this turmoil. Mark, a quiet figure who often lived in the background, now stood tall, his voice steady. This is about our future. What kind of school do we want? One ruled by fear, or one where we learn to forge our paths without the shadows of tyrants looming? In that moment, the world narrowed to focus on his question, the weight of its gravity pulling each of us forward, daring us to ask ourselves the same. My heart raced, looking from Tyler, his smile now merely a shadow of a threat, to Derek, who stood braced with newfound resolve. What would happen next? Just then, an unmistakable sound pierced through the unmistakable crack of a phone camera clicking, capturing this pivotal moment forever. I turned quickly, fear mingling with confusion as I realized it was Tyler's phone. A live stream. My stomach dropped. The realization hit me like cold water. This was no longer just our battle. It was about to become a public spectacle. The walls built around this confrontation would now spill beyond the courtyard, out into the world. I felt exposed, and in that exposure, we stood at the precipice of an unscripted performance where anyone's next move could tilt the scales, shatter moments of bravery, or embrace the power of unified voices. At that moment, I knew the real fight was just beginning. The sun began its slow descent, casting golden rays that fought against the foreboding shadows created by the growing tension in the courtyard. As I stood there, heart pounding and every breath heavy with anticipation, murmurings swirled around me like a restless breeze. Tyler's smirk, sharp enough to slice through hope itself, echoed through the crackle of phones, capturing what could become a defining moment for so many of us, or our inevitable undoing. As the realization of a live stream settled in, a chill raced down my spine. I glanced nervously at the connections between friends and enemies that hung in the air, a delicate web woven from fear and courage. The facade was cracked, the pressure palpable. Every face held a mirrored reflection of uncertainty. "Mark's right," I suddenly interjected, the rush of adrenaline igniting my own dormant fire. "This isn't just about what's happening here and now. It's about the choices we make, the kind of voices we give power to, and who we let define us." My heart surged, and hands tightened around my racing pulse as a ripple of energy coursed through the crowd. Ms. Chalmers nodded appreciatively, emboldened by my words, but every twitch in her jaw revealed just how precarious our situation was. The students' support, marked by murmurs of agreement, began to grow stronger, encouraging courage in the face of Tyler's defiance. "Fear isn't going to change anything," I declared once more, desperation lacing my voice. "If we give in now, we avoid the real conversations, the change we so desperately need. It's time to face these issues head-on." Tyler's expression darkened, his laughter fading into an intimidating silence. For a moment, he searched for words, the backlash of unfamiliarity now showing through his bravado. He often wore his power like a cocky armor, one that had always allowed him to reign over our fears without question. At that moment, one of the students near the back yelled, "We won't let you drown us in your petty chaos." The words sparked a flurry of cheers and chants, echoing throughout the courtyard. It was a unifying moment, buoying us closer together, binding us, even as uncertainty hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. But then the unexpected happened. Amidst the rising tide of spirits, a smaller voice called, "What if I can show you?" A girl stepped forward, her face teeming with determination. I recognized her, Sophie, a typically quiet student who observed from the sidelines. "What do you mean?" Derek asked, narrowing his eyes, his protective nature radiating off him as a question simmered in the undercurrent of concern. Sophie shifted on her feet, her voice wavering then gaining strength as she spoke. "We've seen how this plays out. It's not just school. It's everywhere. Our anger has to have direction. But fighting isn't just screaming back. What if we extend an olive branch first? Maybe Tyler needs to see the impact he's having on all of us." Tyler's brow furrowed as disbelief crossed his features, and yet I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of appreciation towards Sophie. Could it even be possible that we were being challenged to confront the enemy rather than combat it? But how do we do that? I asked, hoping to rally this unexpected hope, wanting it to soar instead of fall flat. Sophie caught my eye, her gaze steady. "We ask him," she stated firmly, though it was clear her own trepidation surged beneath the surface. "We asked Tyler to share how it felt when he was bullied, what made him lash out at us. No accusations, just questions. It might surprise us all. It might even lead to understanding." Understanding? The word hung in the air, so heavy. I couldn't dismiss its power, but uncertainty gripped my heartbeat like fear. Would Tyler truly listen? "Seems like you're all getting soft." Tyler's voice cut through the stillness, a sneer forming at the corners of his mouth. "You think asking nicely is going to change anything? This is who I am. You should just get used to it." A collective inhalation rippled through the group, but Sophie stood resolute. "And you should get used to people standing up against you, Tyler. It's not just about how you think things should be, but about how we shape the world around us together, balancing power." She extended her hand, as if reaching out to bridge an unspoken divide. It felt like a clasp of hope between two worlds, the unknown stirring possibilities right before us. Look, maybe you think this is a game, I added, my voice softening. But we're here today because we want change. Not just for us, but maybe for you too. The crowd turned again to Tyler, their hope climbing higher, this time rooting itself in empathy. His defenses slightly faltered, the mask of swagger dimming. Mattering, right? He muttered, apprehension darkening his voice. Exactly. Sophie's voice lifted above the noise. What do you want it all to mean? Then, in a sudden twist, a figure stepped forward from the crowd. My heart sank as I recognized Tony, the player I had often thought to be a neutral face in the chaos. You think we're going to just forgive you because you had it hard? He said, igniting a flicker in my mind the suggestion we were breaking through. That's not it, Tony, Derek urged, stepping closer, gauging the precariousness of the moment. We're just trying to open a door. The door might lead to forgiveness, or it may not. That's not the point. The point is, there's a choice here. Remember? Tyler's resolve began to shift, the weight of the moment compelling every emotional wavering within him. I could see it, and yet underneath that fragile concession lingered something darker, something that moved beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to rear its head. Then I felt the sudden weight of eyes, not just those around Memphis of authority, peers, and passionate supporters all waiting for Tyler's response. The tension cranked up, stretching thin like taut wire. And just then, the sound of passionate, bruised emotions took another turn. Tyler raised his phone, the sinister glint of his camera catching light, and with a smirk, "Let's see how you all handle your precious moment of unity when I unleash my deep, dark truths." The fabric of our newfound hope trembled dangerously. My heart raced at the thought of what he might reveal, the secrets, the wounds, the stories that could unravel us. As a hush fell over the crowd, I felt an accelerated sense of betrayal eating away at the walls of our moment. I had thought this was an awakening, but could it all bend back into chaos once more? As I stared into the face of potential doom, wonder dawned in the echoes of our choices. Would we stand together against whatever storm Tyler unleashed, or would he scatter us like leaves caught in an unforgiving gale? The answer hung in the air, fragile yet electrifying. One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. The silence stretched, growing thicker with every lingering moment, until it felt like a living thing, heavy and oppressive. I could see the wariness in my friends' eyes morph into fear, as they braced themselves for the weight of Tyler's impending revelation. No longer a simple confrontation, we were poised on the edge of an abyss, not quite knowing what we'd find on the other side. "Tyler, please don't." I shot forward instinctively, unable to quell my rising anxiety. "We're trying to understand one another. Don't turn this into something ugly." His smirk faded slightly, replaced by a brief flicker of uncertainty. Yet, the darkness around him pulsed with a heightened intensity. "Understanding?" He laughed, the sound biting. "You're all too naive to think that could ever work. You wanted to know my truth? Fine. But don't expect to like it." He angled the phone downwards, perhaps to create a facade of intimacy, a sinister act draped in vulnerability. The crowd shifted uneasily, the air buzzing with tension, uncertainty, and an undercurrent of trepidation. "What if it's not too late, Tyler?" Sophie called out, her voice trembling yet courageous. "What if sharing your truth helps instead of hurting? We could really listen to you." My heart swelled with a blend of admiration and fear for her bravery, yet I recognized the risk in her appeal. Would encouraging him only urge Tyler's darker side to emerge, or could it paradoxically gift him the courage to lower his walls? "I don't need your pity," Tyler spat, the anger in his tone a stark reminder of the cracks forming around the fragile unity we'd managed to build. "I don't need anyone." Yet a fleeting moment passed, and in it, I caught a glimpse of vulnerability beneath the surface, just for an instant. What had brought us all here was shared pain, a universal ache that transcended our differences. Desperate, I reached out for that fragile thread, hoping against hope to weave it back into something stronger. "Tyler," I said softly, "everyone has scars. Maybe if you shared yours, it would help lighten your load. You don't have to carry it alone anymore." "Alone? You think I'm alone?" His expression twisted with anger again, building like a storm cloud ready to unleash chaos. "Maybe we could listen together," I pressed, feeling the urge to step closer, fighting against the rising tide of emotions threatening to drown us all. "Listening?" Tyler's voice rose, slicing through the uncertainty, a challenge laced with unease. "You can't even see the truth." Before I could form a response, he held the phone higher, capturing the crowd before focusing it on his own face, eyes narrowing as the tension tightened around us all. "You wanted to be united? Let me show you what unity feels like." He swiped across the screen, revealing something that felt monumental. Gasps erupted from the students near the front. I pushed through, heart racing, eager to reach him somehow, to lessen the crushing weight of his facade. Yet I knew the truth would always bear its own consequences, but this truth lingered as a dark omen. There, displayed for all to see, was a deeply personal video, grainy but cruelly vivid. Tyler at his lowest, being tormented, bullied like a scourge among us. Faces flashed on screen. Those same faces I had seen on the sidelines weeks ago, laughing or simply standing by, impassive to the suffering. It spun around him like a whirlpool, memories of hurt that had coalesced into this very moment of vengeance. My chest tightened as I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of his phony and unwitting participant in a vicious cycle of pain that had long destined his road to arrogance. The sorrowful weight of realization crashed down on those gathered, and I could feel that sickness pooling in the pit of my stomach. "Do you see?" Tyler's voice quivered, a stark contrast to his bravado just moments before. "All of you, you're all capable of the same cruelty." A murmur spread like wildfire, fueled by disbelief, empathy, and confusion. Was this really who Tyler was? A mirror reflecting our own darkest sides? Despite the revelations, before I could even process the implications, he lowered his voice, simmering with rage intertwined with anguish. "This is what made Metis is why I rage. Maybe you should have thought of that before trying to drown me with your understanding." Fear gripped the crowd, coiling into knots of apprehension. I could see the thin threads of our solidarity snapping as judgment permeated the atmosphere. Names called out, fingers pointing. We were in the eye of a storm, and I could feel the chaos brewing just beyond the horizon. "You have it within you to create more pain, to make choices here to be just as bad as me." "That's not who we want to be," Sophie pleaded, part of me wishing that she'd take a step back from his wrath, even though her heart beat with courage. "But we can't move forward if we don't address what's happening." Tyler's jaw clenched, unwilling to bend, and yet, within his stormy eyes flickered desperation. For all his bravado, maybe there remained a piece of him yearning for connect. Iona yearning too often masked in aggression. But before I could utter another word of comfort, Tyler turned away, tossing his phone onto the nearby stone. The crowd surged, confused whispers igniting again, setting a new tone for the chaos lurking just beneath the surface. "Think this is done?" He spat over his shoulder, a sudden intensity filling the air. "You'll regret opening this door. You really will." And just like that, the fleeting hope I'd felt within us dimmed, swallowed whole by an overwhelming sense of impending doom. What fresh horrors would Tyler unleash with his secrets now bared? The answer lay rippling through the gathered chaos, and as I caught Derek's worried glance, my heart sank further, knowing this might only be the beginning. As I took a step back, the weight clung to my chest. Would we survive whatever storm Tyler was about to unleash? The shadows loomed larger, and against the quiet murmurs of support, a familiar coldness began to fester with unspoken fears whispered like a secret across the crowd. The ground beneath us felt uncertain, and with each heartbeat, the undeniable truth echoed louder. We were entangled in something far greater than any of us had foreseen. The once bright and hopeful atmosphere now felt oppressive, suffocating under the weight of Tyler's revelation. The air was thick with tension, every heart racing with uncertainty. People shifted uneasily from foot to foot, eyes darted among one another, trying to gauge the repercussions of this unveiled truth. Tyler had shattered the fragile facade of our unity, exposing the raw wounds of vulnerability that lay beneath the surface. As I stood there, the murmurs oscillated between pity for Tyler and whispers of contempt for him. The sharp contrast of emotions echoed in the courtyard like the tolling of a grave bell, prompting the urgency of change yet gripping our hearts with the chains of fear. My mind raced, wondering how we could possibly mend the rift that had cleaved through us. The rally that had been a beacon was losing its brightness, overshadowed by the darkness Tyler had released. "Why are we standing here?" Direct's voice rose above the confusion, urgency igniting as he scanned the crowd. "Let's not let this moment of vulnerability turn into another opportunity for complacency. We need to act." His passion sparked something within me, a flicker of resolve igniting in the midst of despair. But in that same moment, Tyler's hostility returned, his new mask merely a veil for his deeper insecurities. "You think pointing fingers is going to change anything?" He spat, anger flaring. "You're all just as weak as I am. This is your consequence." "Maybe you're right," I called, leveling my gaze into his stormy eyes. "But you need to understand that weakness doesn't define us. It's how we choose to respond to it. We can choose to rise together, or we can choose to let it destroy us. And right now, you're choosing to divide." Tyler's stiff posture wavered for a moment, his expression flickering with an emotion I couldn't precisely decipher. Was it fear or a hint of awareness? But then the air thickened again as he straightened his shoulders, digging in for another battle, the shadows of anger resurfacing. "Stay united? Look where unity has gotten you," he shot back, shaking the very ground I stood on. But just then, I caught a glimpse of someone emerging from the side of Linus, a quiet student who had always been a shadow in our class. Sam. With a measured breath, he stepped forward, resolute and unabashed. "Maybe it's time to compare scars," he proposed, breaking the tension like a sudden splash of water. "We've all felt the weight of bullying, each of us. The difference is the choice we make once we realize the pain we cause." Gasps erupted across the courtyard like seeds of shock being planted, and I felt my heart run wild. Could we really do this? Share our truths and expect change? He continued, his voice steady and clear. "I've been bullied too. I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of someone's wrath. But Tyler, do you understand what that pain feels like when reflected back at you?" "Shut up," Tyler growled, but the uncertainty glistened around him like dew on grass in morning light. "Maybe if we shared our truths, if we laid bare our souls instead of our fists, we could finally bridge the divide between us," Sam pressed on, his eyes unwavering. His vulnerability rippled through the crowd, opening a door that had previously felt bolted shut. Something shifted in me, yearning to connect rather than combat. As I locked eyes with the girl beside me, I saw in her expression a quiet acceptance of this collective vulnerability this moment could spark. It was time to break the cycle of fear. "I want to share too," I said, feeling the warmth spread through me as the truth found its voice. I stepped forward, heart pounding as I raised my hands, steadying myself against the weight of the emotion ready to pour out. "Tyler, I endured years of silence. I faced countless nights battling against what people thought of me, running from whispers and judgment. Each word felt like a weight shedding a layer of armor, as an unseen bond drew us closer. But hey, race, the thing I realized that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a bridge. Every one of us has struggled and felt fear. The reason I stand here is that we can shape this into a shared experience that leads to understanding, rather than hatred." For the first time, the crowd seemed to draw breath together and inhale a possibility that cut through the tension like fresh air. Faces softened, and around me, Several brave souls began to share their own stories, wounds revealed, struggles shared, connections forming with one story threading through another like intertwining vines. I saw students I had never spoken to before open up about moments of powerlessness. The raw honesty drained the venom from Tyler's words, extinguishing the fire of hatred that had long fueled his cruelty. And then, standing amidst the unveiling of truths, something shifted in Tyler. It began as a twitch of his jaw and a falter in his stance. Beneath the bravado, I saw the flickering embers of doubt ignite in his gaze. The comments subsided, replaced by an unspoken understanding that rippled softly through the crowd. It was the very air stirring as hearts began to mirror the pulse of commonality. "Maybe this pain, maybe it doesn't have to be alone," he uttered finally, vulnerability seeping into his words. The moment was fragile, as if time held its breath along with the silence that settled around us. Has the tide genuinely shifted? Could this raw honesty lead to something deeper? Perhaps understanding was the path that had evaded us both for so long. "Tyler, I know you've been hurting, but it doesn't have to dictate your choices," Sam urged gently, stepping closer to him as the crowd watched in captivated silence. "We've all been fighting our battles, maybe showing ourselves to one another doesn't have to be about tearing each other down. Maybe we can rise up together." Then, he said the words I had feared would never come. Can you really forgive?" Tyler's voice trembled, a fractured plea treading into foreign emotional territory. And as the courage bubbled to the surface, I stepped forward, feeling the warmth bordering on shared humanity wrap its arms around me. "We can't change the past, but we can choose the future. A chance at forgiveness starts with a single step." The crowd held its breath as Tyler hesitated before confessing, "I was just trying to push everyone away. I thought it would make me stronger." "I understand." My heart thudded against my ribs, passion drumming from the echoes of my chest. "Maybe we can help you find the strength you've been searching for together." The air shimmered with collective hope, each heart aching with the possibility of connection. It had blossomed amidst darkness, a tender touch against the brutality of life. And in that space, the weight of hatred began to dissipate, slowly unraveling like the tensions of tightly strung strings loosening as chords of empathy hummed through us all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues upon our gathering, I realized the promise of unity had bloomed amidst the chaos, like fragile blossoms breaking through winter's frost, daring to face an uncertain world. In that moment, it became painfully clear. Our battle was not against each other, but against the fear that had bound us together. When the chant began to rise, a simple call of together. Reverberating under clear sky, the warmth of shared voices ignited something transformative. Together, we stood on the precipice of change, a nexus of humanity refusing to be defined by our differences. I held on to the girl beside me, strengthened by newfound hope and determination, buzzing with the knowledge that our narrative was rewriting itself, turning pain into purpose. And as Tyler glanced at the faces of his peers, his expression shifted, settling into something that felt more fragile, more human. Maybe this time, he wouldn't have to carry the weight alone. In that moment of unity, standing amidst a thrumming pulse of shared humanity, I realized something profound. Forgiveness is not an erasure of the past, but a bridge leading into the future we would build together. And so, as dusk fell, and the stars danced above, we forged our path forward, leaving behind the shadows of fear, stepping boldly into the light of acceptance, hand in hand, together. "Together is just the beginning," I whispered, as we faced the horizon side by side, hearts beating as one in a world renewed.